My wife conspired with her brother to seize my finances. I collected evidence and filed for divorce while she remained clueless. At 42, I believed my life was on solid ground. While not wealthy by any stretch, my career as a marine biologist at the Oceanside Research Institute had provided me with stability, a comfortable condo in Pacific Harbor, reasonable savings, and what I thought was a loving marriage. Victoria and I had spent 7 years together, married for 5 of those. I genuinely believed we had something authentic, something built to last. But the past few months have taught me a harsh lesson about trust and manipulation. The erosion of trust wasn't dramatic or sudden. It crept in gradually through inconsistencies I initially dismissed. Victoria had always appreciated luxuries beyond our means, but I accepted this as part of her personality. I managed all our financial matters, from mortgage payments to retirement accounts and investments, because she claimed disinterest in these tedious details. Then, without warning, her attitude shifted. She began making casual but calculated remarks during dinner or while watching television. "You know, if anything happened to you, I wouldn't have the first clue how to access our accounts," she'd say with practiced concern. Or, "Don't you think everything should be in both our names? Isn't that what marriage is about? Complete sharing?" At first I thought nothing of these comments. They seemed reasonable enough on the surface. But something in her tone, something in the persistence of these suggestions, triggered my suspicion. The confirmation came unexpectedly one evening while I was returning from my study. Victoria was in the kitchen on the phone with her brother, speaking just loudly enough for me to overhear. "He's being difficult about it, but once I get him to sign the papers, everything will change." She lowered her voice then, but I had heard enough. "Sign what papers?" Rather than confront her immediately, I decided to see how far she would go. I began a performance of my own, pretending to reconsider our financial arrangements. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told her over breakfast the next morning. "Maybe we should consult a financial advisor about protecting our assets." Her reaction was instantaneous. A flash of triumph quickly disguised as casual agreement. She was quick to suggest someone she knew, a specialist who works with couples all the time. My suspicions deepened further. The meeting with her recommended advisor confirmed everything. Throughout the session, this supposed impartial professional kept steering the conversation toward joint accounts, and, more alarmingly, transferring assets specifically into Victoria's name. "For legal simplification," he explained with practiced smoothness. Victoria sat beside me, nodding with feigned innocence, as though this were all standard financial planning rather than a calculated strategy. I understood then that this wasn't about protection or security. This was about control. She wasn't seeking partnership, she was orchestrating a takeover. Rather than expose what I knew, I decided to play the long game. I thanked the advisor, told Victoria I needed time to process the information, and began methodically protecting myself. While maintaining my facade of consideration, I quietly opened accounts she couldn't access. I installed recording devices in our home and began documenting our conversations about finances. I consulted with an attorney privately, laying groundwork she knew nothing about. As weeks passed without my capitulation, Victoria intensified her efforts. The emotional manipulation escalated dramatically. "Why are you shutting me out?" she'd demand, tears appearing on command. "Do you think I'm trying to take advantage of you?" She would say it with a laugh that never reached her eyes. The accusation itself meant to make me feel guilty for my justified suspicions. She engineered arguments where she portrayed herself as the victim, claiming I was treating her as an outsider rather than an equal partner. The performance was almost admirable in its execution, if it hadn't been so calculated and destructive. The breaking point came unexpectedly one evening when she returned from her brother's house. "I've been thinking," she announced casually, "we should increase your life insurance coverage. Marcus says it's the responsible thing to do." She wanted me to sign a policy worth 5 times my annual salary with her as the sole beneficiary. That night I checked into the Harborview Hotel, claiming I needed space to think. Victoria's concerned texts flooded my phone, but beneath her words I sensed not worry but calculation, fear that her target was slipping away. She was right. The next morning I met with my attorney and filed for divorce. I methodically secured my remaining assets and prepared for the storm I knew would follow. When Victoria was served the divorce papers 3 days later, the mask she'd worn throughout our marriage shattered completely. "You're leaving me with nothing," she screamed, pacing our living room. "You planned this. You're destroying my life." The transformation was jarring, from loving wife to enraged adversary in the span of seconds. I silently handed her copies of the evidence I'd gathered. Recordings of her pressuring me about financial transfers, emails between her and her brother discussing their plan, documentation of the suspicious life insurance proposal. She didn't even attempt to deny it. She just stared at me, somehow managing to look betrayed despite being the betrayer. Her desperation manifested in increasingly erratic behavior. The day after receiving the divorce papers, she attempted to access my private account at Coastal Federal Bank, claiming spousal privileges and fabricating my consent. Thanks to my prior warnings to the bank, they immediately contacted me. When confronted, she responded with indignation. "I'm your wife. Everything we have belongs to both of us. You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal." A week later, she appeared unannounced at the Research Institute, creating a scene in the lobby. With tears streaming down her face and voice carefully pitched to Carrie, she pleaded, "Please don't throw away everything we've built. I can't imagine life without you." Security had to escort her from the premises as colleagues watched uncomfortably. Her performance wasn't about reconciliation. It was about maintaining access to financial security. When emotional appeals failed, she escalated to public humiliation tactics. One Sunday morning, she appeared on my doorstep, wailing loudly enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, "He's making me homeless. I have nowhere to go." This despite the fact that I had already arranged and paid for her temporary accommodation at her brother's beachfront apartment, an arrangement she had agreed to through our attorneys. As her options dwindled, she resorted to outright blackmail. A lengthy text message arrived threatening to spread malicious rumors about me to colleagues, friends, and family if I didn't halt the divorce proceedings and agree to her financial demands. By then, however, I had already informed my inner circle about the situation. Her leverage had evaporated. The final step was filing for a restraining order, which the court granted based on her pattern of harassment at my home, workplace, and financial institutions. The legal boundary finally forced her to back away physically, though the divorce proceedings dragged on for months as she fought for assets she had no legitimate claim to. In the end, Victoria received only what was legally required, a settlement far from the windfall she had schemed to obtain. She attempted to paint herself as the victim of a cold, calculating husband, but the evidence told the undeniable truth. I maintained ownership of my condo, my retirement accounts, and most importantly, my dignity and independence. Today, I'm rebuilding. The experience has left its scars, certainly, but also valuable wisdom. People reveal their true nature when denied what they covet. Once you've glimpsed someone's authentic character beneath their carefully constructed persona, you can never unsee it, nor should you try. The clarity, painful though it may be, is ultimately liberating. If you've made it through this account of deception and discovery, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and truth.